All right, thanks for coming out. I know it was risky this morning, but so thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Thanks to Mike. Mike's my connection. That's why a guy from Dallas is showing up in Charlotte. But I did live here for 3 years, and I loved Charlotte. So it's good. It's good to be back, and it's good to be here. And what I want to talk to you today about is a little bit about how do airports innovate, and what's the risk that we're addressing. And so, I know you guys could be other places. So definitely, did everybody recognize this place? Come on, it's one of my favorite places, right? And I know you could be here because that's also, it's Friday and it's 5 o'clock somewhere or it's noon. So thanks. But today you're going to listen to me, and you're going to listen to me talk about innovation and how innovation works at airports. And hopefully the way I can do this is to talk to you about the 3 Ps of innovation on how we're handling risk. Because the airports tend to be something that we don't like a lot of risk. And we'll talk through that and some of those challenges. But as Mike said, I've worked in healthcare, which was fun. I worked in financial services, which was fun. But the airport business and the airport industry, it is a challenge that I've never seen before. It is an incredibly operational environment, and that's taught me a lot. And then I'm hoping to convey some of those points to you when we talk about how do we handle it. If you don't know who DFW Airport is, this is the marketing slide. We always have to have a marketing slide. We are the 4th largest or the 4th busiest airport in the world. And what does that mean? That means we have 73 million people coming through our airport every year, which is 200,000 people a day. And if you think about flights, that's 670,000 flights a year. So it's massive. So if you're looking at Charlotte, our beloved Charlotte airport, they're about 5th, so they have about 550,000 flights a year, so we're a little bit higher than that. We are massive. Our physical space is the size of Manhattan. So when you think about our physical space, we are a city. We have the same challenges of a city. We have energy issues, we have recycling issues, we have our own police and fire departments, we have traffic problems, we have parking problems, right? We have all those things that a city has challenges with. We also have 2 golf courses and 3 hotels, if anybody wants to visit, right? Really cool. But when you think of airports, think of small cities. So when you think of smart cities and IoT, that's the world that we're dealing with. And so when we look at trends, we also look at the challenges of the landscape, and transportation is a big challenge for us, and because urbanization is important. How people are moving to the cities is going to change, obviously, how they travel, and we need to keep an eye on that. We know that people are incredibly connected. That means as technology gets developed, people want things now, they want it relevant, they want it personalized, and that affects how they travel. And of course, we can't ignore the environment. Sustainability is huge for us. So all these things drives how we think about how the airport's going to run in the future. So the real question for us is, how do you manage the operational challenges of today? It's a joke. It's okay, you can laugh. How do we handle the operational challenges today, but also be prepared for the unpredictable and messy future? And so we know that the pace of change is going incredibly quick, and it'll be no slower than it is today. And that means that we have to try to meet consumer expectations, and we have to look at our business differently. Because the volume of travelers based on the industry stats, it is going to double in the next 10 to 20 years, and we are confined to a physical space. So that's 8 billion people will be traveling, which is a great thing, but it causes incredible constraints on our environment. And we also know that we have certain cost limits. We can only do so much at the airport. And we also know that we compete like everybody else does and all the other Fortune 500s and all the businesses out there for talent. And in a good economy, we're trying to find digital savvy talent. And how many of you ever wanted to work at an airport? Yeah, I said the same thing 18 months ago, right? But then here I am. So we have real challenges. And so for us, it's all about navigating risk. Because we are an incredibly operational environment. And that means when you're in an operational environment, people do things day to day. They solve problems and they solve them incredibly well. So for us, when you fly, don't think you want a lot of risk in that space, right? We support the takeoff and landing of aircraft, and that is incredibly important. It has to be secure, so that puts constraints on what we do on a day-to-day basis. We also have an incredible amount of policies and regulations. It's the FAA. There's rules, there's state laws, there's state procurement laws. We have to innovate within this space. We also know we have long lead times. We're trying to build a new terminal, and it's going to take us 5 years to build a new terminal. And the question I got last week was, what technology do you want in the new terminal? 5 years from now. That's the lead times on construction, the lead times on building these things at the airport. So how do we work in that environment? How are we going to try to address those things that we don't know what will happen in the future? And of course, we have a variety of partners. We work with TSA, a lot of government partners. Customs and Border Patrol, for when you guys do international flights and you have to come back in. We have our airline partners, and we have many of them. We have concessionaires, we have retailers. So we have all these people that we have to play with in order to actually solve particular problems. And we have a lot of success. The problem with the success is we have no burning platform. Right? You hear about fintech and you hear about healthcare. There's a burning platform and things have to change and things need to be digitized. Planes are going to land and take off for the foreseeable future. Right? Despite what you think and despite how green you are, there's only one way you're going to get to Europe right now, and it's probably not going to be by boat. Let's be honest, right? So we know that planes are going to keep flying and going to keep landing and taking off. So we don't have a real push to change our industry. And of course, we're in a unique industry. So like I said before, as far as talent goes, there are people who know the airport industry, and we have to get talent into our industry. So we have very specialized people who do work on a day-to-day basis in that space, and of course, high security. So that makes all of this challenging. And when we have to navigate risk, there's only certain ways that we can do that. And so at DFW, they said, hey, we need to get serious about innovation. And innovation, the whole purpose of our group is to de-risk the problems and solutions that we're working at the airport. And so we have a very centralized model for innovation. A lot of models out there, a lot of companies do it differently. But for me, and where I've had success, is that when you're new and you're trying to install an innovation function at a new company or at a place that's not used to it, you need a central group to do that. You need a group that's going to help de-risk those ideas and to look at Horizon 2 type of problems and not just Horizon 1, which is the core business. So we've been pretty successful. I was a team of 1 18 months ago. I'm now a team of 9, so we're making progress. And we have a vision. We have a 3-year vision at DFW for innovation. So it's to go from an ad hoc process to an integrated process. And so that means rather than just doing one-off projects that don't make any sense, we actually want to get to a place where innovation is tied to the corporate strategy. It's linked to the portfolio of the company. It's measured, it's funded, and it's managed in a very standard way. That's an integrated model for us, and we have a 3-year plan to do that, and we're 18 months into that plan. So if I asked you what innovation is, some of you might all have a different definition. For us at DFW Airport, it is taking new products and services to market. And when we say to market, that means operationalizing solutions that are either going to improve the consumer experience, generate value for our partners and our stakeholders, meaning revenue, or we're going to be better at operations and be much more efficient in our operations. That's our job. And while we do that, we also have a job of changing the culture of the airport. Because the ideas are the easy part, right? It's really easy to have plenty of ideas. The problem is you have to innovate in context. And that means every company is different. So I don't care where you go, the company's going to be different. There's going to be different problems, different challenges, and a different culture. And so when you innovate, you might think outside the box, but reality says you're going to deliver it in the box. And that means you can't be Google. As much as we love Google, the airport will never be Google. And so we just have to get over that, right? So we have to innovate our solutions inside it. And that means we need to address risk. And we address 2 risks, product risk and institutional risk. So let's talk about process, because process is one of those things that gets us over that product risk. So here's our approach. We work, we hope, through a disciplined approach for innovation at DFW Airport. And that is, we look at a lot of trends. We look at consumer trends, market trends, industry trends, tech trends. We look at all that when we think of the ideas. And we also have built over the last 18 months an ecosystem of partners where we get the ideas from. So it can be tech companies, it can be VCs, it can be startups, it can be employees, it also can be universities. So we have a large network that helps us generate those ideas for the airport. But every idea that we get is scored. So we have a very standard way of looking at it. It's not sexy, right? Process isn't sexy, but innovation is a process. And so we look at every idea and we score that based on its viability, desirability, feasibility, and strategic fit. And that helps us rate every idea in a consistent way. And then once we get at that list of ideas, we then match it against our portfolio and our pipeline. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. But not every idea has the same weight, as an example, and so we have to prioritize what we work on and where we're going to put our money and where we're going to put our resources. Every idea also has to match up to 5 focus areas. So as an airport, we know we can't do everything. And so every idea that comes in, we can't just do it unless it matches 5 key focus areas. And these focus areas are based on where the company's strategy is and what we think that those mega trends are going to impact our company. And so obviously efficient mobility is huge. Mobility as a service and any type of autonomous technology is very important to us. And it's not just moving people, it's moving packages, it's moving your bags, it's also moving those nice passenger boarding bridges that go out to the side of the airport. Can we use autonomous technology to do that as well? So that's when we think about mobility, we think about all those things. We're also very big into safety and security. You demand it, we need it as well. But we have to get more efficient at it, and we have to get more accurate with it. So we're looking at a lot of tools and technologies to help us improve security. Whether it's perimeter security for a 17 square mile place, or whether it's actually going through the TSA security line. We're data-driven. We need to get better at that. We're using AI tools to help us be more predictive in the way we run the airport. As I talked about before, that's IoT, that's smart systems. We as an airport, we're running a city, and we have to get more efficient at doing that. So that's where that comes in. And of course, new ventures, we're always looking at new business models. What are those adjacent models that the airport can be in? Because we're pretty good at some things, so how can we turn that into new revenue streams for the airport? And last but not least, it's the frictionless customer journey. Because we know how stress-free it is when you come through security, right? So we know that we have to solve that problem. And there's a lot of unique things with that problem, right? Some people don't travel a lot. Some of you are probably real solid business travelers. But we do know that time and control are the biggest issues that customers face when they're coming through the airport, and we need to have better solutions to solve that. So we talked about the portfolio. This is how we think about all the products and all the projects that we work on at the airport from an innovation standpoint. We have to match a strategic portfolio. And this keeps us out of trouble, because the first thing people are going to ask is, why is innovation doing that? How is innovation adding value? And so this portfolio approach allows us to work on certain things, and it's matched against the strategy, and then the CEO actually, and the leadership team actually helps us craft this portfolio. So for example, if your company wants to be a leading edge company, you're going to spend more time on the right-hand side, which means you're going to look at more revolutionary ideas, you're going to look at more rapid learning ideas, because you want to be cutting edge. If you're a fast follower strategy type company, you're going to be on the left side. You're going to improve the core business, you're going to differentiate yourself to your current customers in the market. So it's very important, if you're a new innovation function, that you're working on stuff that the company wants you to work on. Because if I'm up there looking at new business models in the revolutionary space, and the business is saying, hey dude, we're just trying to increase sales over here, then we're not doing what the business wants, and that's where you get in trouble. And so the portfolio approach changes every year. It allows us to say, what do you want the innovation team to focus on? Horizon 2, Horizon 3, Horizon 1. Now, we don't give up on any one quadrant, so we'll always spend time in the revolutionary space, but how much time and money we spend there will change depending on the strategy of the company. And this helps everybody understand what we're actually doing. And of course, our process. So we have a 7-stage process. If you're in the product development space, this shouldn't be anything new to you, but we have a 7-stage process. Every chevron has a list of activities that get done, and it has a list of things that we're trying to measure each idea on as we move that idea through the process to de-risk that idea for the business. My team is designed as a front-end team and a back-end team. So you met Mike earlier on. Mike was part of the front-end team way back in the day when I worked with him, right? So you have your creative people, your business case people who work the front end, and then on the back end, we have more of our project managers who help us execute the tests. And that's the process that we run. Again, not sexy, but you have to have a process in order to make sure that every idea gets measured the same way. So let's talk about an example, because I know, yeah, great purpose, process, we get it, but let's walk through an example of something that we recently did at the airport, and this is around autonomous vehicles. So we met with the business 2 years ago. 2 years ago, the transportation business said, hey, autonomous vehicles are going to radically change the market. And anytime you want the business to get moving, always use the term radical, because that gets everybody excited, right? Everybody's going to move. When they hear radical, we're on board with change, right? Because that's a good word to use. So don't use the word radical. So we knew that. We said, okay, great. But it was 2 years ago that they actually had this in their strategy, which was great, but we really weren't acting on it. So the innovation team said, okay, what can we help you do? So how are we going to use autonomous vehicles on our property? And we have a lot of these on our property. And if you've been to Charlotte, you've probably been on those buses too, right? Just think about that, but 40 times more. we have tons of buses on our property, and it's all good. However, it costs a lot, and they're not always full. So we need to try to solve this problem. And can autonomous vehicles solve this problem for us? And we said, okay, we'll take a look. So we said, well, let's do some due diligence, because innovation says in the beginning, you got to do some due diligence. You got to get smart. So we started pulling stats like this, that the value of autonomous vehicles and the growth of autonomous vehicles is going to be a hockey stick approach. And we went, oh, this is great. There's so many benefits for autonomous vehicles. And we said, well, let's learn about it. And we said, oh my God, there's 5 levels of autonomous vehicles. Did everybody know that? Five? You didn't? Oh, okay. There's always one. No, I had no idea there were 5 levels of autonomous vehicles, right? So we're actually at level 4, which means that the vehicle can actually go by itself, but you have to have an observer or a driver in there, which is nice. 5 is when the thing completely goes by itself. So we learned about that, and we said, okay, that's a constraint, but something that we should be interested in. Then we realized, wow, there are a lot of people in this space, and this space is really complex. So we did more due diligence about what does that mean. The good thing is there's a lot of people in the space, right? Which is even better, is that pilots are already going on, even at airports. So these vehicles are already in motion at places. And we said, great, this isn't the first rodeo. That's what we say in Texas, right? Not their first rodeo. We're like, great, so this should be great. Let's test this. This should be a piece of cake until you look at our airport. And we said, whoa, okay, we have a highway that goes right through the middle of our airport. We have massive road infrastructure going through our airport. People do 60 miles an hour through our airport. And we're going to do an autonomous vehicle? And we said, yeah. Well, not really, because the technology isn't there. And we said, uh-oh, the business case doesn't work. So after 3 or 4 months of doing all this due diligence and getting smart about the industry and writing ROI, trying to come up with an ROI and a business case, we said, it ain't going to work at our airport. But we said, well, we can't give up on autonomous vehicles because we know that those are incredibly important. You can't ignore the technology. It's going to happen. So we pivoted. And we said, okay, how do we de-risk the fact that we're not going to put a bunch of people in a vehicle and put them up on the highway? Because risk people didn't like that. They thought that was not going to be a good idea. And so we had to de-risk it. So we changed our use case, and we changed what we were going to do to learn about the vehicle. And so we found a different area to test the vehicle, so we de-risked it by putting it in a different area. And what we're learning is a ton. We're learning a lot about maintenance. We're learning a lot about how much this thing is going to take to charge. How often do you have to charge it? We're getting customer feedback because they're actually riding in it. Are they comfortable riding in it? So we're learning a lot about the vehicle itself and how you actually map a route and how long does it take to map that route. So if you're looking at us in that diagram that I had about the airport, we need to know every vehicle is going to be on a different route. How long and how hard is that going to be to apply this technology? So at the end of the day, in the spirit of rapid learning, it's been incredibly valuable to us and to the business because they actually can physically see the vehicle. And that has now caused a lot of good things, a lot of good questions because it's real to them. You can actually, if you're ever in DFW, come on out and you can go for a ride. I actually rode it. It's kind of cool and kind of creepy at the same time. But it's real and it's live and it's causing us to ask questions. And one of the biggest things that we learned is that our fire department and our security department came out. And we had no idea that they would come out and look at this thing. But they were asking very, very different questions about this than we were. We were all about the customer experience and the value and the business model. They were asking questions like, what happens if the battery catches on fire? What happens if there's a security breach? What happens if this and that and the other thing? And so they actually built an entire training program around how to manage an autonomous vehicle at an airport, which then leads to other things and other value that we can provide other airports. So just one test, one small random test like this leads to a lot of cool things that come out of it. So it's been fun, and it's been running, and we're going to run it for about 3 or 4 months now, and then we'll create a new business case, we hope. So let's talk a little bit about institutional risk. So you heard about our purpose and why we're there. You heard about our process and how we go through that process to de-risk stuff. But now we have institutional risk, which is really the culture side of the airport. And we know that as the age of connectedness happens, as more and more people get engaged with technology, much more data, the speed of the market, we have to change the way we work internally because we just don't work at the same pace that technology works at. So every time we do a collaboration with the business, we want to make sure that the business is with us at the table. And that sounds, pretty basic, but we don't believe in labs. We don't believe in innovation groups that kind of sit out there and do their own thing. We're not an R&D lab. We want the business with us, sitting down at the table, having hard conversations. And so what happens is the innovation unit, we spend a lot of time up front. So the higher the risk, the more unknown the idea is, the more time innovation spends on the front end trying to figure it out with the business to de-risk that idea as we go through the process. So ultimately the business will own it at the end of the process if it works. And so that's the way we play. And it's been working out pretty well, although it's slowly coming together. So we've heard all these things from the business, right? Cross-functional, that was an education for me because in my mind, cross-functional made sense, right? We're all in cross-functional groups. You all come and work together and it's matrix and that's all good. However, have you ever been in those meetings where it's cross-functional and people are sitting there and they're not saying anything because they're representing their department, but they don't contribute? That's a problem. That's a culture issue. And so what happens is people don't ask questions, people don't challenge each other, people don't debate. And that hurts innovation because we're not getting the real story. Because people say, well, to be collaborative, I'm not going to push back on you. And we're saying the other thing. We want you to push back. We want you to tell us what the problem is. We want you to tell us where all the constraints are, which is kind of anti-innovation, right? That's innovation but, and we're all supposed to do innovation and, right? But this is innovation but, and we need to know the buts because we're not going to get to a good decision. And that's what we're trying to help the company do. And we communicate nonstop. We can't communicate enough with a new innovation team. We tell everybody what we're doing. We have events. We do stuff online. We create materials. You can't communicate enough to get people on board to start to change that culture because culture is a long journey. So what are we doing? And I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing, not just to show you the breadth of all the stuff that we're doing, but we are in a highly operational environment. And so when you take on institutional risk like we are, you have to understand the environment you're in. And when you're operational, people measure you on what are you getting done. And so from an innovation standpoint, the small wins are critically important for us in order to show success and to build momentum. And that means we have to show them that we're working with the business and how we're working with the business and that this project is adding value. So yeah, we can have all kinds of process metrics. Yeah, we can do all that kind of cool, fun culture stuff, right? Brainstorming sessions and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm in a world where it's operational and everyone asks, what have you done for me lately? And that means we have to get stuff done and we have to drive projects. So we balance getting stuff done with the culture piece. So let's talk a little bit about what we're doing. I already talked to you a little bit about efficient mobility. Again, some of the other things that we're doing is moving bags, moving stuff. If you think about all the stuff that has to come on and off the property, we're also talking about moving passenger boarding bridges. And if any of you have ever been on a flight where you're sitting there and you're wondering why the door isn't opening, right? Have you ever been in that environment where you're just sitting there and you're going, why isn't anybody getting off the plane? It's because that boarding bridge has to be manually driven by somebody out to the plane and then they open the door. And one of our ideas is, why don't you just automate it, right? Let's make it automatic. Particularly in Dallas, because Dallas, we get massive thunderstorms at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And safety first, guess what? No one's in a boarding bridge and no one's going to be on the ramp in a thunderstorm, so the plane's going to sit there and you guys are all going to sit in that plane waiting to get off. But autonomous technology allows us to get that bridge to the plane and allows us at least to open the door to get people off. So that's one of the big drivers there. Biometrics, we are huge into biometrics. Whether you like facial recognition or not, we are knee-deep in that space. Today we have facial recognition from when you leave on an international flight, so the camera takes a picture of your face and you board. There's no boarding pass, there's no passport, takes a picture and you get on the plane. When you come back, you come in through customs, we take a picture of your face and you move right along. So that's how we're using facial recognition in Dallas. A lot of other airports are starting to do that as well. However, we're also looking at facial recognition on when you drop and check your bag. So when you check your bag in and it's self-service, we're going to use biometrics there. We're also working with the TSA to do biometrics when you check in for a domestic flight. So think about how you go through the checkpoint today. We'll be using your face and biometrics to move you through that process. Our consumer experience team has a mobile app, and they created this real nice wait time, checkpoint wait time. We have 15 checkpoints at DFW. Put that in perspective, that makes about 65 lanes of people. But now, before you get to the airport, you can look and find out which one has the longest line. So you can go to a different checkpoint before you get there, which is great. Now our team is looking at algorithms to measure against that so that we can predict in the future what the wait time will be. So if you have a flight tomorrow and it leaves at 2 o'clock, we can tell you that the wait time at the checkpoint at noon is going to be bad, it's going to be good, and you guys can plan much better. So that's some of the ways that we're doing that for the frictionless travel. Safety and security is huge. We have a great partnership with TSA. We are an innovation task force partner, which means TSA comes to us and tests technology at our checkpoint. We are looking at new ways of screening people. We're testing new technology on employees first, so we have employee portals to get into the terminal, and so we're using that technology to screen employees. We're now looking at ways that we can do it at the checkpoint. Our vision is in the not too distant future. We expect you'll be able to walk through some sort of tunnel that will screen you, and you won't have to divest from your bag or any of your stuff. That's where the technology is. And so we're excited to be in that space. Waste management, not the most interesting thing, but if you think about us as a city and the amount of trash we have as an airport, this is a huge issue for us. The amount of stuff that is going to landfill from our airport, we have to reduce. And so we are actually looking at waste management and how we can solve the waste management problem. And so we've done the journey of trash. You know, everybody talks about the customer journey. We do the journey of trash. We call it trash intimacy. Know your trash. So we mapped it all the way back to find out where is the real problem and how we're going to reduce this. So it's a very complex problem and a big issue. AR and VR, we're exploring AR and VR. We have augmented reality right now in the terminals for engagement purposes, but we're trying to figure out how can we use AR to help you navigate the terminal and also message to you to give you relevant information when you need it, when you're making a connecting flight through DFW. Hopefully you guys are seeing a trend that everything underneath this is technology and digital. That's where we're going. That's where we see the future of air travel. We've also completed our digital strategy, which was pretty big for us. How are we going to transform our business? We have to look at our business differently. So how are we going to digitize the core business by thinking about digital to generate new revenue in the future? So we have a whole strategy on that, and we're getting ready to activate that strategy and how we're going to deliver value not only to the customer experience, but to our stakeholders and obviously and create more efficiencies for the airport. And we're not giving up on the future. We are tied to Uber Elevate. I don't know if any of you have heard of Uber Elevate. That is the eVTOL aircraft that is going to change the way regional travel works, which means that their vision is that a VTOL aircraft will pick you up in downtown Charlotte and take you out to the airport. Well, that is expected to happen at Dallas in 2023. So we have 2 years before we have to figure out how we're going to handle these eVTOL aircraft. And it sounds far-fetched, but it is actually happening, and it's kind of exciting. But as I told you about the lead times that we need in order to prepare for that, 2 years is not a long time away, particularly when you look at eVTOL charging, batteries, support, the customer gets off, how are they going to get into the terminal, and all that good stuff, right? So it's really exciting that we're working on these technologies, but it takes a lot of heavy lifting to get to the right answer. And lastly, culture, doing a ton around culture. This is our story into the organization. We've created playbooks for innovation. We've created materials for innovation so that the business can start to do it themselves. But it's also to make sure that we're all singing on the same sheet of music when it comes to what is innovation. So at the end of the day, innovation is messy. I mean, obviously, or we wouldn't sign up for it, or if it was easy, everybody would do it. But at the airport, it is really messy. But we have a plan, and we know what success looks like for the airport, and it's a 3-year plan. And we are 18 months into that plan, so we hope that over the next 18 months we're going to accelerate a lot of the things that I just showed you, and we're going to position the airport much differently than it is today. Because we know there's a lot of reasons why we don't do things. We know there's a lot of reasons why things won't work or they're too risky. But at the end of the day, we have to have trust with the business. We have to ensure that we have that relationship to have honest questions and honest debate. Because what my team always goes back to the business with is, yeah, there's a lot of no's, but what's the risk if we don't do anything? And that's our job at DFW Airport. So I hope that was informative. Happy to answer any of your questions. Thanks for listening today. And think about airports as cities.